Hi there, I'm Tonya Rivens, and thanks for joining us and watching Canceling COVID, a place for real talk and real solutions to stay safe in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic. We're still in this pandemic, right? Of course you do. And we just have to say over and over, thank you to our sponsors, of course, Mecklenburg County Public Health, mecnc.gov, mecnc.gov. Their information scrolling across the bottom. You can also call them 980-314-9400. It's a great idea to call and be informed instead of just kind of hearing all this stuff and you don't know what to think. There are experts that are available to help and assist you. Another one of our sponsors, Groundwater Solutions, Dr. Tricia Black. Speaking of experts that has her ear to the ground out and about, and she's available as well to answer your questions. She's also joining us, and it just feels good to be back. Somewhat just still keeping this conversation going that started in January. And there were those that doubted that it would last this long. But as you can see, we've got more work to do. So many schools reopening. Our children's safety is top of mind for everyone. We're sending our kids back out thinking maybe we could be sending them into danger. 95,000 children across the country, 95,000 were diagnosed with COVID last week. And that's all thanks to the Delta variant. If you have been supporting and watching this program, we've been talking about it leading up to this, trying to get prepared. And it looks like everyone isn't prepared. Obviously, everyone's not watching. I wish I could say that they were. But anyway, the number's only expected to grow. So the anticipation is to go up, up, up as children head back to the classroom. We talked about ventilation. We had Elise Dashu on a CMS board chair on Wednesday. And of course, the whole issue of mask on, mask off. I wonder if Future really knew what he was talking about when he did that whole rap song. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and pull in our first guest, Dr. Tricia Black from Groundwater Solutions. Again, just an amazing person doing great work in the community, a heart for the community, and really doing whatever she can to support us, and certainly cares about you trying to just get it together, especially as we are in this pandemic. We had to do some out of the box kind of thinking, and that's what we're trying to do. So for those that I see you hopping on now, we appreciate it. Surely share your thoughts and comments and let people know that we're here. Tanya's on with Dr. Black right now. We always have a great conversation. So good afternoon, Dr. Black. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing wonderful. Good to see you today.
Oh, good to see you as well. I think our computer was upset. Our show, you weren't here on Wednesday, and we had all kind of heebie-jeebies. So I don't know. The next time you switch out weekdays, we may have to have that conversation. But anyway,
okay.
What are you thinking as you see these pediatric cases start to soar just as schools are starting to reopen?
I am concerned because I know that if they're soaring now, they're going to be higher when school resumes. And I just that parents are prepared. And when I say prepared, that means they need to be establishing a plan of how they're going to keep their kids safe.
That's the thing that we don't always do. We're not proactive enough, and we're always reacting. Even though we talked about this Delta variant and we saw it before our very eyes in India, burning bodies in the streets because it was so overwhelming. And now it's here, and it's like a scramble is on. So Groundwater Solutions, you've always pushed testing, and we talk about that. And I love that about you. Tests and vaccinations. What type of concerns right now are you hearing from parents? Are you doing more testing?
Testing is increasing slightly.
Okay.
I think every day it increases. We're having more testing than the day before, and we're seeing more positives than the day before. We have not had a rise in children who are positive, though, and I don't think we have had a rise in children testing. Most of the folks that we see are adults. So I think that parents are waiting. I assume that they're getting their children tested when they have symptoms.
Right.
But we also know that children and adults can be asymptomatic, meaning they have no symptoms. And so testing should really be a part of their routine health.
Well, and what about the vaccinations? Are you guys increasing? Are you seeing an increase with that?
There is a slight increase in vaccinations, and I've talked to other vaccine providers who are seeing that increase as well. I think the incentives that the state is offering, the $100, folks are looking out, looking for those sites that offer that, and they are seeing their numbers go up.
Well, that's good to hear. So Erica Simonton Beatty has hopped on. Good afternoon. Thank you. She's a lawyer supporter, and I so appreciate the support. Again, for those of you, please drop something in our chat as we hold this conversation because it's interactive. And We'd love to hear
Mhm.
from you. And if you have any questions or any comments you'd like to chime in on. So, this Delta variant we know is clearly extremely contagious in children.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
how does it make them sicker? I've been hearing some reports, especially with healthy children, that end up being hospitalized and on even on a ventilator.
Mm-hmm. I don't know all of those details. Right now, the children that we see are, they have cold symptoms, cold-like symptoms. We haven't had children with severe respiratory issues, but what
Okay.
I do know is if they're ending up in the hospital, then that means that their respiratory system is being attacked and they need to be in the hospital to protect their lungs, to make sure that they're getting the oxygen that they need. What we have learned over these last 18 months about COVID-19 is what the virus does is it sucks oxygen from your blood. So those children who are hospitalized means that their organs are not getting the oxygen that they need. And I'm sure that they're in the hospital for those reasons.
And obviously, you start thinking of about long-term effects. Down the road, how is this going to affect them? So, the children and parents that are listening right now, for their children that may come home or wake up and they're not
Mhm.
feeling so well, and they have some of the symptoms. What should they do? And what are the symptoms? Is it just like sniffles? If you're showing anything, sore
Well,
throat?
here's what I tell parents, and what everything that I say is for adults as well, is for anybody of any age. Um, Typical COVID symptoms are headaches,
Okay.
um, loss of appetite, loss of taste or smell, fatigue, where you just really don't feel like getting out of the bed. You can barely move. It's almost like you're glued to the bed. A cough, any shortness of breath. Those are the typical symptoms of COVID-19, but we've had some unusual symptoms, particularly in African American communities. I hear a lot of body aches, aches in strange places. So for children, we're learning too what their symptoms are. And mostly there are mild cold-like symptoms, but any symptom I would tell parents to be concerned about. I ask parents that I work with to teach and practice mindfulness, because one of the problems in our community is we ignore symptoms. Your side's been hurting for a week and you haven't really paid attention to it until it's really bad. But if we practice mindfulness, it means that we're learning to listen to our bodies. We're paying attention to the little things and the big things that are that we're feeling. And if we can start teaching our children now to be mindful, then every day when they come home from school, every day when they wake up, we can ask, how are you feeling? Are you feeling anything different? Are you feeling anything unusual? Are you uncomfortable in any way? And they can be paying attention every day, because with COVID-19, we've got to catch it early so that intervention can occur. We don't want it to progress and progress so that we or our children in the hospital. So definitely ask every day how your child is feeling. And if they feel bad, if they have symptoms, keep them home. Do not send them
Right.
to school.
Right.
Don't give them cough syrup and say, well, hopefully you'll feel better tomorrow. Be on the safe side. Better safe than sorry. Keep them at home
And
and
look,
consider
I'm
getting tested.
laughing. It's not funny, but that's what's gonna happen because I got to get to work. I
Exactly.
got
I got to
bills
go
to
to
pay.
work. I
Yeah,
can't be late.
right.
Take this aspirin and go on to school.
Oh man. Well, at least Charlotte Mecklenburg schools are requiring masks, so that's encouraging. And I didn't want to cut you off
Mhm.
because the next thing is, of course, testing. Get your child tested.
Get
Some
your
of these
child tested.
symptoms. Yes.
Have a list on hand of places where you can go where testing is available. There is free testing, so don't go
Right.
places where you're going to end up having to pay for
Right.
testing.
Right.
And sometimes organizations, because they know people are scared and they're in an emergency, and they will charge you exorbitant prices for COVID-19 testing
Wow.
when it is free and available many places in the community. So places near you on hand where you can go, and make sure they have walk-in or same-day appointments. I can provide our information. If you don't have a place to go, you are always welcome to come to Groundwater Solutions and Genesis Project, where we test daily. And should your child test positive, consider getting other folks in the home tested.
Right.
It may take 4 days. So if you go with your child because they're positive, to be tested, excuse me, because they're not feeling well, and they may, and you decide, I'm going to go ahead and get a test too. So your child test and you test and they're positive and you're negative. Well, understand that it may take up to 4 days from after you are exposed to your child who is now positive before you will show positive. So you may need to wait a few days before you actually get tested. Encourage everybody in your home to get tested and be prepared so that your child can continue learning. Make sure that you have an at-home space set up for virtual learning just in case.
So now
Have a
you
good
don't open up a
relationship.
whole nother can of worms with that, Dr. Black, because we're gonna have to do a whole other show about getting your home ready for your child, because you know the challenges we have with remote learning and
Yeah.
access and availability. But you're exactly spot on with that, because we cannot continue at the rate of where our children have fallen behind. But I wanted to ask one other thing, because you're giving out some really great advice, which is you kind of led into the next question. The other suggestions that parents should do, like make sure they have access to remote learning. But now you and I both know everyone does not have the they don't have the resources for that. What are some other things, not to dispel it, because it's needed. And if
Right.
someone is having an issue with that, there are some
They
resource
need to talk
centers.
to their school, talk to
Yeah,
their school,
yeah,
talk to the social workers at the school. Tell them you
right,
need internet and you need a hot box. CMS has hot boxes that you can take home and plug up and have internet access. So
right,
ask for what you need. And what you don't want to do is wait for that to happen,
right.
because then your child's missed a week of school by that time before, because
Oh,
CMS does not move quickly. We all know that. So ask in advance that what you need in case something should happen, in case there is a outbreak at the school and that particular school closes. You want to be able to be prepared at home and have your support networks ready. Who's going to go get your food? Think back to where we were, a year ago. Who's going to go
right,
to the
right.
grocery store? Who's going to get medications if you need it? So go ahead and have a preparation plan in place so that you and your child are okay.
That was great advice. And so hopefully people will start, charting out a plan, kind of like teachers have to do a lesson plan. You're going to have to come
Exactly.
up with a COVID plan
A
for your
COVID
family.
plan.
Yeah, especially
Until
with
we're
you
done
having
with the
children.
pandemic, we've got to have a plan. One other thing, if your child tests positive, please contact the school and let them know so that other children and teachers can get tested.
Then don't say I'm not telling them, because they're going to put my kid out and I got to go to work.
No, it's very important.
I
It's
know it's
about
not a
keeping our
laughing
home
matter.
safe
Yeah,
and the community safe. We have a
exactly.
responsibility.
We've got to start thinking more about our neighbors. We got to take
Mhm,
care of one another. So as we wrap things up, give out your information, because you guys provide testing, you got vaccines,
mhm.
and people need to write this down so
Right.
that if they're
So
in a situation, and then tell us where you're at today as well.
okay, so we're testing in our office today. We don't have any community sites today, but
Okay.
our office is located at 5104 Reagan Drive. That's off of Sugar Creek behind the McDonald's. Our telephone number is 704 596 0505. You can call the office. You can go to the website that you see on the screen, or you can text the number 797979, and you'll get a registration form for testing or vaccination.
All right. Dr. Tracia Black, great information as always. So good to talk to you. I'll see you back on Wednesday. And thank you, Groundwater
You're
Solutions
welcome. Have a
and
good weekend,
Genesis.
everybody. Stay
Oh,
safe.
thank you. Take care. It's always truly a pleasure having a conversation with her. You can always hear the passion and the commitment. And Genesis Project and Groundwater Solutions, a supporter of Praise in the Park. And I'm just humbled and grateful for that as well. We'll talk about that at the end of the hour. But we want to talk more about the largest teachers union in the country, the National Education Association. Now they're saying they support making COVID-19 vaccines mandatory for teachers, or requiring them to at least undergo regular testing. And initially, that was not the case. And I heard that report, and I'm very happy to hear that. So I'd love to hear from you, Miss Erica, and anyone else hopping on. Should COVID-19 vaccines be mandatory for teachers? Weigh in and let us know. My sister is on, and she says, my mom says hi. So glad to see that she's watching. Hi, Mom. Also, you're an educator, Miss Travis. Let us know. Do you think that teachers should be required to get the COVID-19 vaccine, or at least require them to undergo regular testing? Now, I know that's very interesting thought, and the issue now is more and more employers are requiring this. And as a small business owner, I continuously share, you know, you have to protect your interests. You put your life savings, your heart and soul into your business, and to allow someone to come in there and cause an outbreak and you lose it all, because we can't go back. We can't afford to shut down again. I get it. So, if you're an entrepreneur yourself, if you have your own business, then you have a better idea of the decisions that employers are making. And I got a call today, me and radio, Cumulus is now requiring it. Urban One is now requiring it. And the list is going to continue, folks. So I think maybe COVID again may require some people to have a career change or step out on their own and do their own thing, whatever the case may be. We're talking about our teachers now, our educators. Please weigh in. And I must say that I'm happy that NEA did kind of do a reverse course. I'm not really sure why they put in their reversal, but I did hear a report while I was riding in about they just decided it was the best thing because we see what's happening with the Delta variant. So drop your comments in the chat. Should vaccinations for teachers be mandatory? And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Now we're going to shift gears just a little bit because there's been a lot of conversation around evictions. And another top concern for families right now is simply how to keep a roof over their heads. And any educator will tell you it's tough, the homeless population, when it impacts our children. It impacts everything, their learning, their focus, their hygiene. All of this comes into play. These are things that we take for granted. And there are quite a few homeless children in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. I know some of the locations where they have the highest population. I know a lot of organizations that work with them. And so this is just one more thing that, we have to work our way through. COVID-related job cuts have made it very difficult for many to pay rent and mortgages. And I've got my second guest on. So glad to have her join us. I'm talking about Shauna Hunter. She is the supervising attorney at Legal Aid. And I had a chance to talk to her managing attorney or the manager over the office. And she was very helpful. And we really want to work to try to get information out because people really need to know what's going on and how they're being impacted by these decisions that are being made. So good afternoon, Ms. Hunter. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the CDC that ordered a 60-day renewal of the nationwide eviction. It's a moratorium because COVID cases were so high. Where does Legal Aid come in, and how do you help people facing evictions right now? What role do you play?
So Legal Aid is a statewide law firm. For all your viewers who may be unfamiliar with us, we represent tenants in all 100 counties of North Carolina. And so the way in which the Charlotte Housing Unit assists residents of Mecklenburg County is we represent people in court who are going to court for evictions. And we give advice as well for people we're unable to represent. And so Legal Aid is a free nonprofit. We don't charge any money for our services.
So right before I hopped on the air, I saw a report where a judge has ruled that the 60-day moratorium that the president implemented once the other moratorium had been dropped, he said that it is okay to move on, but the caveat was it may not stand up in court because it's going to be challenged. Do you guys expect a whole lot of challenges, or what are your thoughts on that?
So as far as the CDC new order, we do expect some challenges from landlords just because this has been going on for over a year now. Eviction cases have been in a moratorium. And so we do expect challenges. What I want to be clear that your viewers understand this new moratorium and the requirements. It is a different order, and so it has a lot of similarities from the last eviction moratorium, but there are some key differences. So the similarities, there's a declaration that the tenant does have to complete. It only prevents evictions for non-payment of rent. In North Carolina, you can be evicted for 4 reasons: non-payment, breach of lease, holdover, which means that your lease term has expired, and criminal activity. The moratorium only prevents the evictions for non-payment of rent. And it's not automatic. The tenant has to do something. Like I said, the CDC order has a declaration attached to it that the tenant has to give to the landlord. And that was part of the last order as well. And that declaration requires a couple of things. 2 very important things that it requires: that 1, the tenant apply for rental assistance with a government agency. And so in Mecklenburg County, that is going to be RAMP, also known as ERAP. You probably heard, and your viewers have probably heard, that there's a lot of rental assistance out there. And that's true. And RAMP is taking applications the 1st through the 15th of every month. So people have 2 more days to apply if they have not already. The other big requirement with the CDC declaration is that tenants make partial payments to as close to possible as the full amount as they can. And so the moratorium does not prevent your landlord from evicting you. It does not waive your rent. And so the rent is still due. It's not going anywhere. And so if you have the ability to make partial payments, you need to be doing that. The key difference between this order and the last one is that this order is only in effect where there's a substantially high or high risk of infection. Now, currently, that is almost all counties in North Carolina, and it definitely covers Mecklenburg.
Right.
But if a county drops out of high or substantially high and remains that way for 14 consecutive days, then the moratorium is no longer in place. And so that's very important that people are aware of that. And so legal aid is constantly checking on the status. Like I said, Mecklenburg County is currently covered for that protection, but tenants need to complete the declaration.
What are some of the rights that tenants have, though, if they don't fall into any of these categories? Are there any other rights that they have?
And when you say they don't fall into any other categories, do you mean they
don't qualify under the 4 that you have listed, and they still, don't have the money, don't have the means? Do they have anything to fall back on?
Yeah, and so the eviction process in North Carolina is not an automatic thing. Your landlord does have to take you to court. There's self-help eviction is illegal. So that means your landlord can't just come and change the locks. Mm-hmm. They can't come and just turn your power off, turn your water off, and say you have to leave. That's illegal if that happens. And you should contact legal aid if you would like legal assistance. And so the landlord has to take you to court. A tenant would get notice of that, and there would be a hearing. They would have an opportunity to tell the judge their side of the story, why they should not be evicted. And even if a judge rules against the tenant and awards the landlord possession, they don't have to leave that day. Mm-hmm. So there's an appeal process. An appeal is where you can ask another judge to hear your case. And that is a 10-day process for the tenant to file the appropriate appeal documents. And if you appeal, you can stay in your home while the case is on appeal, so long as you pay what's known as a rent bond to the court.
Well, I know a lot of the court cases right now are paused in Mecklenburg County because of an outbreak, and I don't know if that's impacted you, but how has COVID impacted your caseload? And that probably should be an obvious answer to me, but if you had to say percentage-wise, what was the impact?
And so for our entire organization, a lot of the cases start through our central intake unit. And this is a number people can call to apply for our assistance. And we've seen about 1,000 calls a day at our central intake unit. And the vast majority of them are for eviction cases. And so, of course, that has trickled down to the local offices where we're seeing an increase as well.
So when I ask what is the most common complaint or issue that you're seeing with the people that are calling or getting evicted, they're saying, I don't have a job, I don't have money. Because we got to be honest here, Ms. Hunter. There was a lot of money that was handed out. And I'm talking about these stimulus checks. And I don't know if my mom's still watching. She's 85, but she put a question out to me that I thought was quite interesting because she's old school. Did anybody ever consider taking the money, the stimulus money that the people that weren't quite familiar with how to handle money and manage or budget, and maybe try to sit down and work with them on working something out with their landlords so that they would have their rent paid? Now, I don't know who would be able to do that, but clearly there's a population that isn't good with budgeting, and I'm one of those people. Thank goodness I have my husband. But if you give me a whole bunch of money that I'm not used to having, and I'm not always responsible with my money, it would have worked so much better if the government says, okay, we're going to talk to this realty company, this person, and they coordinate payments so that at least you'll still have a place to live, and this is what you have left over. Now, I know it opens up a whole nother can of worms, and this is my fantasy world, but was there ever a conversation, because I know you don't have right to my money, there's a whole lot of legal stuff, so that's what I'm asking an attorney. Was there ever a conversation, like when you have these cases, where anyone says, I just need help. Can you help me? Like, do you direct them for how to budget your money in the future or what to do? Do you guys get into any of that?
So we do get into situations, and of course I can't talk about any specific cases, but there are situations where a tenant wants to do some type of payment arrangement with the landlord. A lot of landlords are, agreeable to that. But I want to kind of talk about a couple of things you said in regards to there was a lot of money coming in, which is true. But we also know that the unemployment rate significantly increased in our country. And so when the pandemic hit last March, a lot of people were immediately impacted. And some of that relief that we were speaking on, stimulus tax refunds, now we have the child tax credit and all of that, didn't come for some time. And so you have individuals who have been out of work for over a year, and they've been behind for over a year. So while there was some relief, unfortunately, it was not able to cover the full past due balance, and people are just trying to catch up. And so that's why I encourage people to apply for rental assistance through organizations, specifically here in Mecklenburg County. That's going to be RAMP, also known as ERAP.
So one other question, Ms. Hunter, I had Key Pro on, another company, I think it was Symmetry, and they said, I'm constantly coming across people, they say they've got money for rental assistance, but there seems to be a disconnect in getting the information to the population that needs it. Are you finding that also to be an issue?
It is. It is. That's why I keep saying it. I keep saying I want to get them information out there. I want your viewers to share it with their neighbors, friends, people in the church, you know, people they see wherever that are calling them for help, because there's a lot of money out there and there are still people here. We know that the CDC moratorium first went into effect, the first one last September, and those agencies were created, the HOPE and then later on RAMP and ERAP. And here we are almost a year later, and people in our community still are unaware that that service is out there. And so we are seeing that. And so it is a very short window, unfortunately, just through the 1st through the 15th of every month. And like I said, with the CDC declaration and moratorium, it's not automatic. And that declaration requires you to apply for assistance with a government agency. So I know our community is familiar with Crisis and Good Friends and Good Fellows, and they're great. But in order to get that protection, you need to apply with a government agency, and that is going to be ERAP RAMP. And so I encourage people to do that.
I see others hopping on. Erica Beatty has a comment that's around school, so we'll get to that. But Annie Allison and Frederick Love, good afternoon. Thank you guys for hopping on. I'll say I'm friends with a lot of small business owners. I got one friend who had a tenant, and she was, I think he said 10,000 behind, but he just wanted her out. He's like, I don't want the money, you know, just let's go ahead and move forward, because it is tough for the landlords as well, because the mortgage doesn't stop getting paid. But there have been options where you can work something out with them as well. I know it's not an easy solution. It's very complicated. And thanks for reminding everyone, you know, even with the money that was coming in, it is very difficult for people who are trying to, you know, stay above water, and most importantly, keep their family in a home. So as we wrap things up, is there anything else you would like to share?
Yes. And so for people who would like assistance with legal aid, they can apply for our services by calling 704-594-8682. And that is the number to the Charlotte Housing Unit. And so if they need assistance with, if they're in court and they need representation or they need some advice about what's going on, definitely give us a call.
And could you maybe mention that one more time, the phone number, because that way people write it down and share this conversation. We're on YouTube as well as Facebook, and I'll post something afterwards just to remind people, because this is great information that people need to hear. And I really wish, and I know when they hand out this money, and call it a shameless plug or whatever it is, because I work in radio marketing, that the people that get these resources to try to get to that community, start marketing to them, you know, a small budget to start going, meet them where they are, because people are trying to survive. They're so busy doing whatever they can that they often, you know, miss these type of conversations. And so it just might help if you're not doing it, you know, try something different. So give the number out one more time for us, please.
Sure. That's 704-594-8682.
Thank you so much, Shauna Hunter, for taking the time to talk with us. And of course, she's a part of Legal Aid, giving us some expert advice. And we're working on getting more conversations from Legal Aid, because they provide some great advice, and there's no fee for it. So that's what we're about, is giving you the information and sharing it so you can share with others. So click share as you're on here so other people will know. And hopefully you took the number down so you can pass it along and share that as well. It's a Friday, and we got a comment here from Erica Simonton Beatty. As we get ready to start wrapping things up, I want to share her comment. She believes that the safety and the safety of others should be required to be vaccinated. That's the question of our day for educators. They work closely with our children. And that's a good point, because some of the children, that they work with aren't able to get the vaccine, even if they were interested in getting it. So having our educators get the vaccine is, she's saying she thinks that it should be mandatory. And of course, the National Education Association, which is the largest group or membership organization for our educators, they've done an about face and made the decision that they will support making COVID-19 vaccines mandatory for educators, or requiring them to undergo regular testing. Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be trying to get a regular test because it's no fun. But we all have to do this to kind of support one another. So it's time for me to wrap things up. We've got more and more guests. We're going to continue to have conversations around back to school, the impact, some more great guests that are lined up, some more great information to share with you about how canceling COVID is now getting some national exposure, which is exciting. And it's all because of you. You've been so supportive and continue to support. And we really appreciate that as well. But it's hot outside. Like you didn't know, at 12 o'clock, we were already at 90. So make sure you do what you need to do to stay hydrated and stay cool. But most importantly, make sure you enjoy yourself and stay safe. As always, life's challenges make you better, not bitter. I'm Tonya Rivens. Of course, whatever you do, protect yourself, mask up. The social distancing, the physical distancing, people have pretty much forgotten about that. But you can do the personal hygiene. Thank you to our sponsors, Mecklenburg County Public Health, mecnc.gov, and also Groundwater Solutions for all of your support. And thank you for continuously supporting us at Canceling COVID, because together we're going to get through this pandemic. Have a great weekend, everyone. I'll see you on Sunday at 7 a.m. Sounds of Inspiration on Streets.